Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, everyone. So glad that you are here on what sounds like it's going to be just a little bit more of a snowy day. Now, I personally am still down in Kansas City, and Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki is unable to join us. So, guys, I'm going to need your help here as listeners today. I'm looking at the North Dakota road map right now, and I am seeing snow cover on I-29 as you go north of Fargo, headed to Grand Forks. There are some scattered wet and icy spots in a variety of places across the state, and I haven't yet gone to Minnesota roads to check what that's like. For those of you who are on the highway and want to give a road report, if you're seeing any changing conditions, you are welcome to reach out at 701 293 9000. Give me a call and let me know what's going on. We do have a weather update from Dean. And the weather update is sponsored by Ryan Bonsack. He is with Equitable AgriFinance, providing long-term fixed rates for farmland financing. He's here to help local farmers and ranchers, so be sure to give Ryan a call, 701 261 6529. Addison, my trusty assistant, would you be so kind as to give Dean's weather update? And I might have some comments to make afterwards. Boy, colder weather it is. We are looking at a little bit of snow right now, but it sounds like we're going to see more snow coming in on Saturday. Today, we've got some wind behind it. Now, Addison, I'm not there. Can you tell if the wind is up right now? I know you've been in studio for a while, so maybe you've missed out on some of the weather right now, too.
Yeah, none of the various windows I currently have eye access to can show me if it's windy outside or not.
Well, I'm going to look for those eye in the sky folks out on the road and who are going to let us know what it looks like. So I really appreciate it because, again, I'm a little ways away. But I had a great opportunity this morning to listen to Gary Lezak speak. Gary is the founder of the LRC, the Lezak Reoccurring Cycle, which is the weather method model that we use here at WDAY Radio. Gary made some great points talking about the fact that there is order in the chaos that we know to be weather. There's a river of air above us, and we can watch the weather cycle, and we can use that to forecast and predict, of course, weather events, which is exactly what Gary and Dean do for us here when we are ready to watch the weather reports. What we saw over the last couple of days that's going to be happening is these predictions were coming in already on November 30th. So where I'm at in Kansas City, this storm that occurred that dumped about a foot of snow was really starting to see predictions on November 30th that it was going to occur. We're looking at 2 more inches of snow down here too. Gary, and using the LRC, is 91% accurate on our severe weather. And he can really drill down. He can even get to your zip code. La Nina, we often get questions about, does La Nina matter in weather? And it's not great for our weather where we live. It tends to stretch out the storms, meaning more distance between each time one occurs. And then, of course, generally, storms will move out and move east rather than staying and spending a little more extra time with all of us. So what we're seeing for weather that's going to happen here in our region coming up for the weekend, we've got a little wind today. We're going to get some flurries. But as we get to Saturday, we're going to see more snow, less wind. And it looks like by about 6 o'clock in the morning, it's going to move into the Red River Valley on Saturday morning, and then it'll move off into east central Minnesota. Now, I'm going to try to make sure I have all that right, and Dean will make sure to correct us tomorrow on Friday so that we make sure it's going smoothly. But those are the things that I know right now that are happening weather-wise. I also want to make sure to say congratulations to our winner of the Desperado Eagles Vegas vacation, Dennis Dahl of Leonard. He is packing his bags. He has been able to win our trip. This is a big thank you to our sponsors, American Security and Gate, Frontier Airlines, and Kingpin Social. Also a special thank you to the DJ Coulter Insurance Agency, American Family Insurance, for upgrading Dennis's hotel room to a 5-star 4 seasons. Dennis, have a wonderful trip. Send us lots of pictures. We've had a great time getting everybody qualified. when it came time to do this contest. So thanks for being a part of it. Now, moving on to a few things that are going on when it comes to agriculture, not just talking about the weather today, because I'm not your meteorologist, but I'm glad to kind of fill in for y'all. And so I want to make sure to talk about where I am, and that is at FarmCon. FarmCon is not a familiar name in the trade show world in much of our region. Not a lot of folks have spent time attending this event here in Kansas City. This is put on by the Van Trump Group. Kevin Van Trump has been a long-time commodities trader and has done very well business-wise with investing. And he saw a need to reach out and work with farmers. Let's face it, all of you as farmers are risk takers to begin with. And so what he wanted to do was provide accurate information for folks who want to be investing, trading, and being more creative in their businesses the way Kevin and his family are. His son Jordan runs a business called Ag Swag, so they do great work for printing, hats, all sorts of branded items that you can be using in giveaways, and they really focus on doing that for those in the ag and agribusiness industry. Now, what FarmCon has grown into over the last 10 years is you now see a convention that I'm at where it's a 2-day event. We have about 1,100 people here that are paid to attend. They made it a worthwhile investment for their farm to pay a fee to be here in Kansas City for 2 days. Some of you have heard me talk on our morning shows. We've had a variety of speakers that are not only here to talk about investing and business wise, they have brought up great information in regards to commodities training, starting with energy. We've talked about shipping and how that's a tradable commodity now. When you hear about ships out on the ocean actually buying their spot in line for loading and unloading. We've talked about geopolitical effects, especially in the industry of agriculture, what we think it's going to look like on that landscape in the next 3 to 5 years. Everybody's crystal ball might be a little bit fuzzy. It's been really interesting to hear some of the panelists that want to talk about investing and how to make your farm more profitable and efficient. And especially, these speakers have been outstanding. It's fun to listen to someone who's here from the Disney Institute and gives great ideas about being creative and stepping outside your self-inflicted boundaries in order to be better on your farm. And that's just taking some extra thinking time. There's been folks here who've just tried to give you a little extra pep in your step and also help you lay out some strategic planning for your farm down the road. After we wrap the show today, I have the opportunity to go listen to the head of communications for Harley Davidson, because he came in at a time when Harley wasn't doing very well. And how are they able to turn that company around, and how could that help your business? So there's farmers here, there are agribusinesses here who want to learn as well. And I have found that it's a pretty neat conference that I didn't know a whole lot about until I got here. So it's been great fun. Now, if you don't want to go all the way to Kansas City, ladies and gentlemen, there are farm shows, and we are in farm show season for you to attend. Think about places that are going to be hosting really soon, such as the Wide World of Weeds will be happening. That's put on by North Dakota State Extension. They also do a day on soil and water. And there's also the Advanced Crop Advisors Workshop. Those are all coming up within about the next 30 days. If you are a crop consultant, or if you're someone in agribusiness who needs certified crop advisor credits, these are events that you can be attending in order to build your credit base. So consider taking on those. North Harvest Bean Growers Association has their Bean Day next Friday at the Holiday Inn in Fargo. And I got a message this morning that a previous guest on our show and a good friend of mine, Machinery Pete, is going to be attending. He's going to talk about what's going on, particularly in the auction and secondary equipment market. Following that will be the KMOT Ag Expo out in Minot. And for those of you who have never been to that expo, it is a 3-day event at the All Seasons Arena in Minot on the fairgrounds. It's a fabulous farmer-focused event. This is where, if you want to see everything from short line equipment to brand new pieces, if you want to talk about livestock handling and cattle, this is an excellent place to do it all under one roof. And when I say one roof, that's important because it's the end of January in Minot. It's cold, you guys. Everybody dress warm when you go to Minot. And hopefully we'll look at the LRC to tell us what we can be facing for some temperatures. Shortly after that, we have Agronomy on Ice. That'll be February 5th at Devil's Lake, North Dakota. If you've never experienced it, it is open to everyone, and especially targeting farmers and folks in agribusiness, because you get to come out in a tailgating atmosphere. You get to spend your time watching and listening to what folks are talking about in each different fish house that serves as their trade show booth. You can enjoy something to eat. You can probably find yourself something to drink, whether it's water, mocktails, and more. But above all, you get to network with folks because right now, one of the biggest questions I continue to hear from farmers is, what am I going to plant next year in 2025? So here's a great opportunity to take that time and learn more. Following that, we'll see the Top Producer Conference. That also happens in the Midwestern states. I believe Top Producers in Chicago this year. And later on, as we get to the beginning of March, will be Commodity Classic. Commodity Classic is the largest indoor farm show. It will be held in Denver this year, the 1st to the 4th of March. So if you're interested in any of those farm shows and would like to attend, please drop me a line, ag@flagfamily.com. I'm happy to share information with you. And just know that there are so many trade shows to go to locally or on a national scale and regionally. If there's something that you want to learn, you are always welcome to just check them out, especially locally and regionally. Many of them are free attendance. It's a great time to go out and kick the tires, so to speak, and have a little education. So more on farm shows coming up. But today I have a great guest joining us. She's with North Dakota State Extension out of Bismarck. That is Shaundra Ziemann-Bolinske. Shaundra is with NDSU Consumer Sciences, and she sent me some talking points for us today that I'm very excited about. Talk a little bit about things like milk, pasteurization, raw milk, and more. And I'm excited to hear all of the advice and information that Shaundra has to share with us. Plus, let's face it, I bet there'll be more great topics to share as well with her. So don't go anywhere. We're going to catch up with our markets with the American Ag Network. And after that, we'll be right back to talk with NDSU Extension Services Shaundra Ziemann-Bolinske. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining us and spending part of your afternoon right here today. Remember, if you are out on the roads today, I'm a little ways out of town and I would love any road reports y'all might have. Please feel free to call in and Addison will let me know that you are there. And you can reach me at 701 293 9000. I'm joined today by Shaundra Bolinske-Ziemann, and Shaundra is an NDSU Consumer Sciences Extension Specialist. Shaundra, how are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm doing good, and I look forward to callers calling in too to tell us the road reports. I'm in. I was going to say stationed. I used to be in the army. I'm located in Bismarck, and so we're actually driving for hockey to Moorhead this weekend. So I need a road
Ah,
report too.
all right.
I'm
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 going to
thrilled to
rely
be
on some
here.
of our favorites out there to help us with that. That'll be great. So, all right. So, Chandra, first of all, I got to tell you, every time I have somebody from NDSU on, y'all have the best headphones with the best sound quality. So, thank you for that. And
Mm,
two, tell me more about who you are. And you just said you used to be in the military. And
right.
how did you get to your job and what do you do for NDSU?
Okay, great start. Thank you. Well, okay, so my background, I'm a food scientist. I also have a background in food safety. So, what that means is how do we make sure that we are consuming food that isn't chemically contaminated, isn't microbially or we call it biologically contaminated, as well as physical contaminations. Maybe there's a BB that was, left in the meat or something. And so a few different ways that we keep food safe. And I did my undergrad at University of Minnesota, so I was a gopher for a few years, and actually master's program at Kansas State. They have a really good food science program, and uh, I was in the military for 21 years. So and I started out in life being just passionately interested in nutrition and food. Dietetics wasn't quite the right lane for me, so that's how I landed in food science. And I worked in product development for the first 10 professional years after undergrad with a pretty big food company out in Minnesota. And then worked my way into I deployed in between there, but then came back to North Dakota. I needed my parents, and like a lot of us, we love the place. So I was then a food safety director for a company that produces meat products in the middle of our state, and I think I have really enjoyed this journey because everybody's involved in consuming food.
Yes. I can tell you I just came from lunch and I don't have a lot of skills, but I'm a fairly good eater. Grandma even said so.
Right,
Um,
right.
so
So,
I have to ask,
yeah.
just before you go forward, I have to ask a quick question. When you said product development in food, and the first thing I thought of was literally Clark Griswold with his new no stick using cereals, so like the milk would glide off and it would stay crispy. Are those the types of things that you talk about in food development, or is that all fiction?
Right. I get a real kick out of that part on that movie too, and the perfect pictures they're taking, because that was my life for a little bit. Uh, but so product development really means, and typically the larger companies, the smaller companies usually are driven by sales, what their,
Uh huh.
product demand is from consumers, whether it's schools or uh, smaller, larger audiences. And larger companies do pretty in-depth consumer learning tests. So they want to know what consumers want and on a larger scale. And we might go to, being in Minnesota, we might go nationally and send people to Universal Studios in Florida and give them a couple park bucks to take our survey. So when you said Disney, I thought of that. So doing their own research to find out what
Okay.
consumers want.
So now, how does that translate to the job you have today with NDSU? And also, are you covering statewide in your position?
Okay, great. Yeah, so the new position that I have, it was actually developed, and I've been in it for a year now. So I started last January, and before that, I was an extension agent for a county in North Dakota for 10 years. So I'm really
Mhm.
glad that I had a little background, at least in understanding extension. Now, with this new position, I'm the food systems coordinator, which means I am tasked to help particularly consumers, not necessarily producers. uh, that's where our ag agents come in and our ag specialists. But so, from a consumer perspective, understanding how food is produced and processed. And there's quite a bit of misconception out there that we're realizing. And we want the average consumer who might not understand how their food is produced from an agricultural standpoint, we want to help them understand it.
I would tell you that I think a lot of us, we know a little portion of about our food is produced, and oftentimes we rely on our memories of what it was like when we were kids. But that's really changed in our food systems. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes. Really, it has. And particularly what we understand about microbiology, those organisms that we can't see. And, as far as using our senses to warn us that there might be a safety concern, we know a ton more uh, in just even the time I've been in the industry. Lots of
Oh, I bet.
changes.
And someone who's been in ag for a long time as well, you're right. I've seen lots of changes on various
Hmm.
sides of our industry. So, well, you and I are
Yeah.
going to have a lot of things to talk about today, but just
Yeah.
before we get to our bottom of the hour news, I wanted to ask, maybe we can tee this up just a little bit. There's so
Yeah.
much discussion these days about raw milk versus pasteurized milk and why we or why not we may see bird flu. We're not going to answer all those things in 3 minutes, but what I am going to ask you is,
Yeah.
can you explain what does pasteurization really mean to us as consumers? And then we'll probably have to talk about it in milk as well as other foods too when we come back. But if you want to just describe pasteurization, I'd appreciate it.
Right. So pasteurization is what I would call, it's a proven process that heats milk to a specific temperature for a specific time, designed to kill, to eradicate the disease causing germs. That includes bacteria and viruses. When you think of heating something, that's a process that, in this case with milk, it's a really interesting, and I would say a great association with heat and milk, because the beauty is, and there is some misconception out there, but for the most part, we are not decreasing the amount of vitamins, minerals, and protein that are in this food, particularly certain vegetables, not necessarily protein, but the phytonutrients, um, the benefits that aren't necessarily vitamins and minerals, they can be pretty heat sensitive. In the case of
Uh-huh.
milk, they stick around.
That is a vitally important key. We're not degrading the quality of our milk, but I know that we have folks that are proponents of raw milk for a variety of other reasons. And Shaundra, thank you so much for really helping us be educational today. When we come back from our bottom of the hour news here at 1:30, I'm going to ask you a lot more questions about that, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share for all of us as consumers. So folks, don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Hey, are you considering some different options for insurance? Well, JLA Insurance is there for you. God needed a caretaker for his planned paradise, so he made farmers. Nate Thorsrud is the owner and farmer on a family farm in Grandin, North Dakota, and has insurance roots right here in the state of North Dakota. His experience has been going on since 2004 for insurance, and it's a family trustworthy operation. He knows what a farmer needs because he also farms. And Nate will make it awfully convenient for you, and he will come to you. If you want to have a chat with Nate, you can reach him at 701 371 0311 or email Nate at jlainsurance.com. My guest today is Shaundra Ziemann-Bolinske, and she is with NDSU in Consumer Sciences. She has this fantastic job to talk about food science, food safety, and help us as consumers understand more. And as we started our conversation out a little while ago, Shaundra and I were talking about the whole move for raw milk these days and what proponents are in favor of when it comes to it, but why others are saying, no, don't go to raw milk. So, can you help us break that down just a little bit, Shaundra? We talked about pasteurization. What's good about raw milk, or what's a concern about it?
Okay, love this because let's talk about both sides. And as I start in answering this, I just want to connect with the audience and say that I grew up on a crop farm and then we moved to town. And I'm a early producer in my life and now a consumer, and so I resonate with both sides of the argument. And so I'm going to talk about what I think that, and also what I've researched that might be even more of an emotional attachment to raw milk. There is a bit of
Hmm.
nostalgia and tradition, those folks that resonate with how they grew up, and, more of like a connecting with a simpler and traditional food practice. So that might be, I think, one of the top reasons why it's so controversial. We're
Okay.
finding that about 3.5% of the U.S. population, I think it's double that in North Dakota. I haven't seen current numbers in the last 2 years, but about double that a couple of years ago, of consumers who prefer this both from cow's milk, bovine milk, and goat's milk. Uh, and, there's also those folks that are city dwellers that want to have a connection to their local farms and maybe
Hmm.
sustainability. They feel like grabbing, picking up this raw milk from their share might be easier to ensure that they're fed a certain way, for example.
Hmm.
So if you're
Hmm.
hearing this and you're maybe thinking, I grew up doing this and it's more natural, I hear you. Okay. And then there's a little bit of anti-establishment sentiment where maybe we don't need the government making laws about this, and actually we're not necessarily saying that. In North Dakota, our lawmakers have decided it's up to the consumer and the producer to keep us safe because they are not going to have laws on this unless it has to do with processing the raw milk. Now, the Department of Agriculture in North Dakota are really the experts there. But for example, you can't take raw milk and process it into butter. Okay.
Okay.
And then, there the less maybe benefit that I've found has an emotional attachment and why people even just want to consume raw milk might be that there is perceived, and I say perceived, health advantages. And those might be, for example, we think that they're easier to digest, like we have enzymes in our body that help us digest and go through those processes. Enzymes are like just help it start and to go through. And so
Hmm.
some folks think that there's beneficial enzymes to help your body digest it, because particularly in the ages of infancy for humans 0 to 1, it is harder for straight cow's milk to be digested, and that's because we have a different system and it's in its early phases of developing. And not a medical professional myself, but this is from research. And uh, maybe bacteria in the pasteurization process where we're heating it up, maybe it people think perceive that there are less vitamins and minerals, and it gets rid of the protein, so there's less good things that you're drinking in your raw
Hmm.
milk or in pasteurized milk. So, just a few things on that side.
Okay.
And flipping over to the benefits and sort of answering those comments, are we okay with that, right? We want to know, okay,
Yeah.
what's the real skinny, right? And we do rely on science. And what I want to tell you is that sometimes my parents, my farmer parents that and I grew up canning and home canning, watermelon. We did everything because you had to
Mm-hmm.
preserve your garden and even your little specialty crops, not necessarily your big commodity crops. We pickled watermelon, we did peaches, obviously pickles, and there's that's a whole different subject. But when it comes to this particular answering of, okay, why do we pasteurize in the first place? Like I said in the beginning segment here, it it actually we know that it's safe through many, many science experiments. This isn't just one,
Hmm.
and this isn't just one organization. And so I found a really great article and a couple talking points that I want to share with you from somebody. She is actually a PhD food scientist from Wisconsin. And there's quite a few other things that she does. So, I mean, she's credible. I really am particular about my sources. And that's something that NDSU Extension is always all about. Either it's our own research or making sure it's a very credible source, like other universities. And
Sure.
yeah, so there's, and we know it, there's a higher prevalence of human pathogens. So, what we mean by pathogens are those are the ones that get us sick. Have you ever heard, probably Bridget, have you heard about, there's good bacteria?
Oh, yeah, I have.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like probiotics.
Yep.
Probiotics, pro meaning good. And, there are probiotics. And the interesting thing about bovine milk is those probiotics are not they don't necessarily translate to the human gut. And that is something that's the most current information that I got that I wasn't aware of until what has happened here. And why we're even talking about this, Bridget, is because of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. We've heard of the bird flu,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so and the crazy thing about the bird flu is that the wild birds are who spread it. And we don't have control
Yeah.
of where they land. hmm So
No,
actually
they
I was
didn't
just on
ask
a
for a
call.
flight pattern to be filed before they took off, if you could say. And
No,
I
I
want to
mean,
add one thing to your sources too. I've read an article that said back it was the 1920s when pasteurization laws for food security were passed here in the United
yeah,
States because we didn't have as good a sanitation as we do now. And I think that's also a big part of it.
huge.
Sanitation has improved so much. But you're right about the wild birds. We have wildlife that pass through here. We are a state where we see a huge migratory bird population. They don't ask where they can land. And we have now
hmm
seen bird flu cases happening with dairy in multiple states. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but because I
hmm
drink pasteurized milk and I grew up on a dairy farm, we could drink from the
hmm
bulk tank. We also had a pasteurizer that we made. We pasteurize our own milk. I'm
mm.
not afraid of that because no live virus fragments have been found in pasteurized milk. Am I on target here with your sources and the points you have?
Great job. Yes, let's just
Okay.
start by answering that. Uh, we have found, and so in California, our state of California, is where they actually found on a retail store in raw milk that was at
Hmm.
a point of sale that there was live fragments of the virus, and so they took it off the shelf and they did some studies and they found that pasteurization totally eradicates it. So they did find that there were fragments of the virus that were no longer live whatsoever, and so we can see that pasteurization kills that virus. And yes, we have not had any bovine influenza A, that's what we call the bird flu in cows. So bovine influenza A has not been detected in North Dakota. It has been detected in neighboring states.
Yes.
But we have had, I was just on a call with the emergency folks in the state of North Dakota, and we talk about this every other week. Uh, they were telling me that there was one commercial flock and three for poultry, three backyard flocks, we call them for poultry. So there have been a few, not necessarily in cows though. Just know that, and we're doing pretty good.
Yep.
I want to give a shout out to our producers for that. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
that's a
then
great
answering
point.
that about the
They're doing good
sanitation.
work.
Yeah, yeah, nice work, everybody out there. That sanitation piece couldn't have improved without you.
I would agree with that entirely. And
Yeah.
I also think that the probably the biggest point that I want folks to hear today is you don't have to be afraid of drinking milk, number one, whether it's pasteurized, especially if it's pasteurized. If you're going to drink raw milk, help me make sure I say this the right way. I always encourage
Mm-hmm.
folks not to just do it cold turkey. So if you were thinking that you'd go to raw milk, you're going to want to ease into that. If you just flip overnight, there's a real chance that that's going to be tough on your system because I heard you say our systems in a bovine system are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't necessarily think I can say one way or another, but what I can tell you is that I have, it just happened to be at another fellow extension university. It was Nebraska Lincoln, and they actually have farms on or a barn on campus, and usually there's a couple milking dairy cows and lactating at the time, and so we can take samples from there. And directly walk them up to, I think it was the fourth floor, whatever floor it is at UNL. And we were able to go to the pathogenic lab to see if there was pathogens and then what the total count
Oh,
of bacteria was. And so it was really just a great, and I go back to this every time I think of raw milk. So we were able to grab it and look at how much was there. And I remember at the time, the 8 samples that we did, it was on an average of 67,000 total bacterial cells, good and bad. I mean, just total plate count.
mm-hmm.
And I just want to share, and I don't want to get too sciencey, but the average human being, adult, and children are more susceptible, so it's lower numbers. So just remember, if you're feeding your kids dairy, they have less established systems in their gut, their digestive system, and so they're more susceptible. They're higher risk. Okay, so back to the plate count. The average human being can handle about 1 million total cells
Mm-hmm.
of just good or bad bacteria. And when you get sick, have you ever, what do we call it when we go to get sick at home or we don't cook our food correctly, or even a restaurant, unfortunately, sometimes just, in general, we get sick, right? Like
mm-hmm.
food poisoning,
Mm-hmm.
we call it.
Yes.
Food
Mm-hmm.
poisoning is defined by the microbiologists as 10 to the 6 cells. That's 1 million cells of overall, and it just overwhelmed your system.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be adding 2 more zeros. So
Oh,
take
wow. Okay.
67,000, which is what we found, and multiply it by 100. Now we're doing math class. But okay, so every step, talking about sanitation, I'll come to a full circle here. So every step of sanitation, so you're milking the cow, and then you have to maybe put it into a container, and then you have to put it into a final container. So every step in that process, the engineers and the microbiologists tell us you can add a zero to your total count of bacteria if you are not doing
Okay.
it in a highly sanitized environment. And so again, the shout out to the producers who are making sure they go through the processes to keep everything clean, so that that added zero, so we're not coming out already over our, being 6 million cells. We're keeping it
Right.
at 67,000. And actually that pasteurization takes that risk down to just in the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And, just sharing a little bit about that. Um, and we know that recently did a press release. Let me quote that quick, and you can go ahead and talk so I can bring that up.
Sure, because I think what we're doing today is really just answering questions for folks because NDSU Extension is a taxpayer funded operation.
Hmm.
And I love
Right.
the fact that as experts, as you said, you either have the research or you go find it from someone so we can answer those questions. Let's rely on that perhaps more than we rely on Facebook. And I know I slam Facebook and I
Right.
make fun of it, but I'm really big on going and figuring it out by those who've done the science work behind it. That means a lot to what I
Yeah.
hear and see. So, Chandra, please,
Love that,
what
Bridget.
quote your
Yeah.
press release? Yeah, let us know what you've
Okay.
heard.
Yeah. Right. And to that point, social media has its place and I love it,
Sure.
and I like to actually consult it myself. And then what I do is I go and check it out for myself. And that's what
Right.
we're here for. So
Hmm.
use us. Uh, Okay, so here's my quote. According to the Centers for Disease Control, that's CDC, that's the organization that keeps us from getting sick. Uh, Prior to the introduction of pasteurization, so in about 1938, milk and dairy products were responsible for a quarter of the foodborne disease outbreaks. I saw that on another article today. It just quoted the 1920s. So a quarter
Hmm.
of the foodborne, food poisoning cases.
Yeah.
By 2016, very recent here, that number has dropped to less than 1% because of this quick little kill step that does not overly denature the proteins. And actually, there is a little bit of, and what that means is it's uh, kind of starts the digestion process. And
Hmm.
the small amount that it does denature with the heat, because typically that's what we're doing, we're denaturing when we cook our steak or something. um, it actually is helpful for our bodies in it's part of that digestion process. So there's no loss in the amount of protein that our bodies see it as. It's actually just a little bit easier for us to digest. I'm not a dietitian, so I don't want to go into that further, but that's what I'm reading in this research from our dairy experts in
Okay.
Wisconsin. Yeah, pretty interesting.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
So, Chandra, I really want to say thank you. Our job is not to direct someone's choices and tastes, but if we can give you
Yes.
some background information so you can make better decisions, that's what we want to do.
Right.
And I,
Yes.
I really, I really want to say thanks for coming on today. I have a feeling you and I'll talk more often because as farm kids who grew up canning, and I still do it a lot, I
Right.
think that's probably another great discussion for us down the road about some of those food safety practices. Some of those great things that grandma did maybe weren't the
Mhm.
best, but we can talk about
Mhm.
them. So, where can
Yes.
people find you, Chandra, if they want to follow up and maybe ask you more questions or find out some of the research you've used?
Right. So check out the NDSU website. If you just go to the main page, extension is under NDSU Agriculture, but just go to the search and type in Shaundra. My name is spelled Shaundra. I'm the only one so far. So just search me up, and I would love to, and I'm sure Bridget's totally open to, if anybody wants to send us a topic you want to hear more about, we're
Yeah.
happy to take your suggestions on content. And I want to thank you for asking me to join. This is my first time on your show, and it's been great. You are a great host.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from folks. Our listeners give the best ideas. So anytime
Mm,
that we can get topics from them, I certainly glom onto that. Thank you, Chandra. I will send those on to you so we can book another day to visit. And folks, don't forget, we need some road reports out there. So if anybody wants to give it,
hmm
or if you're not calling me, it must mean that things are fine. So we'll find out soon enough. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back to recap a little bit of weather, roads, and some headlines. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining. Just a last few minutes to wrap up some things that are going on. Number one, I'm checking the North Dakota road reports right now. Again, I'm not in state. Things look okay. We see a lot of good to go roads, at least all the way to Jamestown. We'll see they look wet out towards Bismarck. And as you go north to Grand Forks, you have some snow covered roads. So please slow down and be careful. There is indeed some weather going on in the region today, and a small system that's going to come through might bring some slick roads. It's going to reach the Red River Valley a little bit later this afternoon, is what I'm told, and temps are warming up somewhat. There's a larger system coming in on Saturday that will bring less wind than we have today, but more snow. And the Saturday storm track is not yet completely set. It looks to be somewhere around 6 o'clock on Saturday morning that you'll see snow starting to move into the region. Winds 10 to 20 miles an hour, should be ending late in the afternoon. Dean will be able to confirm that all tomorrow because I'm not your meteorologist, but I'm just trying. So, and I know when Shaundra was on our guest, I said, I don't trust all the things that go on Facebook. Talk about somebody who um, was talking out of the sides of both their mouth, right? I don't always follow what goes on Facebook, but yet here I am at FarmCon, where I was able to receive the Top Ag Influencer Award. I'm one of 50 in the US. So good news, guys. I go out and do the research for you. I don't just make it up. So thanks for joining me today, as well as our guest. Looking forward to visiting with you tomorrow. Stay tuned for Jay Thomas.